The power of magic stunned everyone aside from Gandalf, both the players and movie characters included. So it seemed like the players weren't the only ones who hadn't seen much. Such powerful magic was rare to even the natives. This power was beyond what a living being should be able to obtain. It belonged to the forces of nature. There was a long pause before Boromir yelled. "We must leave this place. If Saruman weren't to summon another attack of this caliber, there's no way for us to survive. We follow the path ahead to the Gap of Rohan. Then pass through West Emnet to my city. We will be safe there." Aragorn disagreed. "No. Rohan is too close to Isengard. His magic can reach us in this distance. He could even send his orc army out. We can't go through the Gap of Rohan." Gimli said. "If there's no way up, then take the path down. I have told you many times to go through Moria. The territory belongs to my cousin, Balin. We can pass it safely. I swear." Gandalf was breathing heavily. He slowly turned to the Gorup. "That magic takes a long time to prepare and consumes a large quantity of energy stones. He can't use it again in a short period of time. However, it wouldn't take long if we stay here like this. You decide, Frodo. Which path are we going to take?" They were carrying the hobbits on their backs. The hobbits were shivering from the cold. They had the weakest bodies and it looked like they couldn't withstand this cold much longer. Frodo looked at them, then opened his mouth with great difficulty. "We go through Moria." No one objected to the decision of the wielder of the One Ring. Zhen wanted to bring them over one by one with the nightmare. But after seeing the magic, he couldn't be certain that Saruman wouldn't strike them again. He had less than 50% chance of surviving without Gandalf's barrier. Everyone quickly backed down from the snowy mountain and they finally let out a sigh of relief. The stress from that environment was heavy. No one was able to relax with Saruman waiting to use his magic on the side. There was a short path leading from Caradhras to Moria. This path would take them a few days. So in these few days, their minds were extremely focused. They had to avoid being detected by the crows and be prepared for the possible incoming magic despite Gandalf reaffirming them there was no more to come for now. They group arrived at Moria, the lowest point of the valley. Next to the cliff was a pool. Those who remembered the plot knew of the Watcher in the water. This beast would force the fellowship into the door of Durin, then it would destroy the door. Gungnir went near Zheng and said. "This will be the first battle in our agreement. The Watcher is certain to contain an energy stone. According to our agreement, whoever kills the beast gets the energy stone and rewards." "Okay." Zheng nodded. "All right then. We will both attack as soon as the beast shows itself. But also keep an eye on safety of the rest of the members." Gungnir said. "Yes. That's why I look to you for cooperation. My powers tend to spread out to our teams. You can more readily protect them since you are a close-range fighter. No one else worth working with me with the power of Ice Age." Zheng simply smiled in response. Everyone would think their own abilities were the best. His explosion and destruction weren't weak either. He didn't bother trying to explain. "I am curious. Even if Ice Age is powerful, how do you fight normally when you don't use energy stones?" Gungnir laughed. "You are underestimating me. I am a high-level devil fruit user, especially the most expensive Logia type. It is said that on the 5th stage, I will be able to control all the forces of ice in the world. I could possibly freeze a continent at that time with the unlimited amount of energy. Anyway, let's give our best in this fight." Zheng shrugged. He followed at the back of the group. They walked toward the wall. Gandalf was examining the wall. "Ithilden. This is an enchanted metal that only appears in moonlight or starlight. It will also react to certain words." As he was speaking, the cloud cleared up and moonlight shone to the ground. A trace of silver light in the shape of a door appeared on the wall. There were dozens of special rune words inscribed on the door. Gandalf let out a sigh of relief. He pointed his staff at the silver door and read the words. "Enin Durin Aran Moria. Pedo Melanamino. I'm Narvihin Eshant. Celebrum Bro Eregin Tethant. Ithihin." A hobbit asked. "What do you suppose that mean?" Gandalf smiled. "If you're a friend, you speak the password and the doors will open." His staff remained pointing at the wall and he spoke in an unfamiliar language. However, nothing happened after his words. Gandalf was surprised. Then he chanted another spell. And again, the door remained shut. He seemed rather annoyed. He walked to the wall and pushed it while muttering to himself. "I once knew every spell in all the tongues of elves, men and orcs." The hobbit asked again. "What are you going to do, then?" "Knock your head against these doors, Peregrine Took. And if that does not shatter them, and I am allowed a little peace from foolish questions, I will try to find the opening words." He went into a rage and yelled. Then he sat by the wall. The veterans of course knew the plot and the password. It was simply the word friend in the tongue of the elves. Someone from Team Northern Iceland said. "It seems like a riddle. Just speak friend and it will let you enter." He was about to say it but Gungnir grabbed him. Gungnir said. "Don't disrupt Gandalf. Let nature take its course. Let nature take its course." He stressed his last line and shut that person up. The other veterans also didn't say anything. They would eventually enter the door anyway. Time passed slowly. Gandalf couldn't solve the password. The rest of the group sat on the rocks to rest. The hobbits were the only ones busy. 3 of them were searching for things on the ground. They found a long tree branch, then attached a string and worms. They were planning to fish in the pool. After they cast the bait into the pool, Aragorn came to stop them. Do not disturb the water. The three of you stay still. Merry shook his head and said. We only have rations. Why don't we try to fish for a better meal? What can be there in the water? Mermaids. He didn't notice a tentacle swept across the surface of the water. Everyone only saw a shadow. Merry was excited. See, a big fish. No one had been to this place in such a long time. There's definitely lots of big fish inside. Just you wait for your meals. Maybe we are the meal. Aragorn drew his sword. A few seconds later, several tentacles exposed themselves. An octopus-like beast appeared in front of them. The beast was over 50 meters in length, much bigger than shown in the movie. The octopus shocked most of the group. It appeared all out of a sudden and its entrance was breathtaking. Gigantic objects were always breathtaking to look at. The octopus's body was over 50 meters. This isn't the fish I am fishing for. Merry said. He seemed dumbfounded. Gungnir was standing nearest to the water. He submerged his hands in the water then pulled out 2 ice spikes. He threw the spikes at the octopus. It obviously didn't expect the humans to attack so fast when it just came out of the water. The spikes pierced into its head and a tentacle before it reacted. Despite the sharpness of the spikes, the throw was lacking in power. They only went a few centimeters in before they stopped. The attack did not cause much damage. The octopus howled in an appalling voice being hit. It quickly went toward the shore. The tentacles swiped at Gungnir. By the looks of it, the force from the swipes would kill him if they hit. Gungnir yelled. Save me. Zheng. Zheng sighed. He realized why Gungnir picked him for the alliance. His attacks were flawed. They required energy stones and they left big openings in between moves. So the attacks were powerful but borne huge risks. Gungnir needed someone to bear the risks. Zheng didn't avoid his responsibility. He had to do his part since he agreed to the alliance. He stepped in front of Gungnir before the tentacles hit. Tiger's soul reached out and slashed the incoming tentacles. He raised the sword to attack the octopus's head. The light blade extended to 10 meters long. It would cut off a part of the octopus if it hit. However, Gandalf yelled. Get away. Ice spikes formed in the air next to the octopus. The spikes shot toward Zheng as he swung his sword. If he were to continue with his attack, the spikes were going to pierce both him and Gungnir for sure. Zheng was shocked. He immediately pulled back the sword to block. The light blade also covered Gungnir's front. All the ice spikes hit the light blade. Zheng paused as if something struck him. He seemed to have discovered something strange. He stared at Tiger's soul. But the octopus didn't stop. Its tentacles swept at the two of them from all sides. Tzz Legolas and Hung both used explosive shot. The arrows underwent an impact on the way then shot into the octopus's body with unperceivable speed. Then they broke their way through the body and out from the other end. Despite critically injuring the octopus, Zheng was still staring at his sword. Gungnir gave a shout as he charged at the octopus. The water froze with each step he took. He took several steps forward, clenched his teeth then leaped at the octopus's body. He got on the body before the tentacles got him. Its body began to freeze from the point of contact. In just a few seconds, a quarter of the octopus had turned into ice. Things were straightforward from this point on. The group quickly finished the octopus off now that it was injured and frozen. Gungnir got the kill as he wished. He revealed that he got 3,000 points and a rank C reward. There was also a rank C water attribute energy stone in the body which made him smile. Zheng was still spacing out as he stared at the sword. Xian sat down next to him. He was eating a white fruit unique to the Lord of the Rings world. Its taste was fragrant. The fruit was white as jade and had recently become Xian's main dish. I know of your agreement with Gungnir. Even though you are being used, you won't lose out much due to your strength. It also increases our relationship with Team Northern Iceland. That's why I didn't stop you. I am curious what made you give up on the rewards. I need to know the details as soon as possible. So I can plan accordingly. Zheng finally shouted with excitement. He laughed out loud and didn't care for the others looking toward him. He took off the dragon's hard necklace then said to Xian. Shoot me with your gauze pistol. Oh. Xian didn't hesitate and slid a pistol into his hand. He pointed the pistol at Zheng's head which scared Zheng's face white. He was only just raising his sword. Wait. Wait. At least give me time to prepare. Wait for me to say go. He channeled his chi into Tiger's soul. The light blade extended out. Then he said to Xian. Go, shoot wherever you want. Xian didn't know what holding back meant. He fired multiple shots all at Zheng's head. However, an invisible shield blocked the bullets. The gauze pistols weren't as powerful as Zero's rifle but they were still powerful. They could kill the bugs in Starship Troopers with ease but couldn't break through Zheng's defense. 10 shots later, Xian stopped. He frowned. Barriers would show themselves in a translucent manner when attacked. So this can't be a barrier ability hidden in Tiger's soul. The only possibility is that you changed the shape of the light blade and turned it invisible. Zheng laughed. That's right. When the octopus attacked me, I subconsciously enlarged the light blade. So I thought that the light blade might change its shape according to my will. I tried it and it indeed works. Ha. I am going to be invincible with this. If I cover my whole body in the light blade then attack in explosion and destruction, nothing can beat me. Xian put his hand over his forehead. He suddenly felt a strange sensation despite having no feelings. How much time did you spend shaping the light blade to cover your body just now? Zhang thought for a moment and said. About a second. Less than 2 seconds. Xian nodded. How much qi did it use? About 20%. Zhang was getting guilty. He noticed the flaw to this method. Xian continued calmly. You said that once your qi turns into light blade, it will dissipate naturally. You can't convert it back to qi. The light blade lasts less than 10 minutes. This means assassins like Zero and Hun counters this ability. They just needed to find that 1 second vulnerability and you are dead. Furthermore, the light blade is tough but there is history of it being shattered. If your enemies have those type of magical items, you are also dead. Zheng's excitement died down. He smiled bitterly. I thought this ability is going to be effective but it's of little value in the end. I was too full of myself. It's not of little value. Your effectiveness doubles in the 10 minutes before it disappears. It's also a good survival ability. Try to increase its cast speed. If you can reduce the time to 0.5 seconds, the flaw will be gone. You will only have to worry about magical attacks and attacks that are too powerful. Xian wasn't as harsh as usual. He actually consoled Zheng. This surprised Zheng. Just then, the movie characters called for them. Frodo solved the riddle on the door like he did in the movie. They read friend in the tongue of the elves. The door to Moria finally opened. The Lord of the Rings world was similar to many other fantasy worlds. The elves were graceful and fair. The dwarves loved mining. Of course, that wasn't very specific and perhaps unfair to the dwarves. But they were a race that valued minerals and metals. Mining was their hobby. Moria was the result of such hobby. The underground city spanned through the whole Caradhras mountains. According to Gandalf, they were to journey for 5 days and nights from one end to the other. This distance was uncommon in both this world and the real world. That was a mine through the mountain dug by people. You will soon see the warm welcomes of the dwarves. Haha. Gimli walked at the front of the group. With burning flame, refreshing beer, and slabs of roasted meat. This is my cousin Balin's home, not a mere mine. Gandalf raised his staff. It emitted a soft white light that illuminated the mine. This isn't a mine. It's a tomb. Boromir observed the surrounding. His voice was heavy. Bones lay throughout the entrance. Most of them were remains of dwarves. Some seemed abnormal. They looked like remains of humanoid creatures. Tomb was a fitting description for this place. No. No. Gimli sobbed. He ran toward the remains. Legolas had kept his calm. He picked up an arrow from one of the bodies, examined it and yelled. Orcs. He threw the arrow away then drew his bow at the darkness. The rest of the crew drew their weapons. Boromir shouted. That's why we should have gone through the gap of Rohan instead. That is our only path to cross Caradhras safely. Gungnir and Zheng met eyes. They both realized things were turning worse. In the movie, the door should have been collapsed by the beast which forced the fellowship to head into the mine. However, the door was intact now. The beast was killed. The fellowship could retreat as they liked and that would render their plans useless. Gungnir immediately said. The gap of Rohan is too dangerous. We don't have to fight an army on the plains in the mine. Furthermore, if Saruman finds us, he will definitely find us. We would have nowhere to run. The underground city is large enough that we might not be discovered by the orcs if we keep our noises down. Gandalf frowned. Zheng ran ahead. Nothing hindered the nightmare's speed and he quickly disappeared in the darkness. A minute later, the red burning flames came back. Zheng yelled. There's nothing inside. I didn't see any orcs. The movie characters hesitated. Neo said. Let the holder of the One Ring decide whether we will quietly go through Moria or slip through Saruman's eyes. Frodo, make your choice. There was obviously a trap in his wording. He associated the underground city with calm, which described the current moment. However, there were hidden dangers under the silence. Then he described the gap of Rohan as under Saruman's eyes. It was close to Isengard but not as close as he described. Though their situation didn't allow the others to think too deeply into his words. Frodo looked over everyone then at the bodies on the ground. We will go through the underground city. Everyone keep our noises down and there shouldn't be danger. We can't hide from Saruman's magic. And so the fellowship's path was decided. Gungnir and Zheng became suspicious. Why did Neos help them without a reason? Neos came over to the two and said in a low voice. I can guess the deal between you two. As someone that knows it, I ought to take part. The mithril is expensive to exchange from God. Our team must get part of the loot. Of course, we aren't asking for much. A quarter is enough. You two split the remaining 3/4. How do you think? Zheng said. Since you are joining the agreement, you will have to show your strength. We all have to spare no effort at critical moments and we must protect members from other teams. Neo smiled. Of course. No one from our team will back off when the time comes. I will also join the fight if necessary. On the other side, the fellowship began walking down the mine. The players followed closely behind. Moria was extremely big. According to Gimli, the underground city was originally a cave. The dwarves found the cave then mined it through the mountains. They built their city inside. The mithril in the city made dwarves thrilled. They used the metal to trade with the wizards, elves, and humans for resources. The value of mithril doesn't need to be said. It's the currently best metal for magic. It's light and tough. 100 times more valuable than gold of the same weight. And the most famous metal of Moria. Gandalf was walking along the wall. His staff illuminated the wall. A silvery reflection showed the unrefined mithril. Ithilden is much rarer than mithril. The ratio is about 1 to 1,000. The whole of Middle-earth only produces enough Ithilden to craft a plate every 100 years. It is the best metal that serves as a vessel of the mind. Wizard's Towers and the door of Durin that we just passed by require specific words to open. That is where you use Ithilden to store a bit of the mind to act as authentication. Weapons that are crafted with slight amount of Ithilden will have minor consciousness just like the One Ring. Only the first person whose blood come in contact with the weapon can use it. Other users will not be able to utilize the secrets of the weapon. Gandalf explained and showed off his knowledge. These words reminded Zheng. The property of recognizing an owner was similar to the weapons that he obtained in Starship Troopers. Yinkong and Hung couldn't utilize the full potential of the weapons because they were not the original owners. Was there a way to remove this property? Zheng asked. Any way to remove this property? I mean removing the previous owner and have the weapon bound to a new owner. Gandalf glanced at him. It is possible, but it depends on the strength of the minds of the two individuals. The One Ring is only an powerful artifact without Sauron's energy. If there's a way to remove it from the ring, it will no longer be evil and the elves will not have to leave Middle-earth for their lost of the rings. However, Sauron's mind is too powerful. Not even God can remove the evil, cruelness, and bloodshed from the ring. We can only destroy it. Is this what you want to do? Zheng said. No, I have several weapons found in ruins that are already bounded to an owner. The residual energy prevents my comrades from utilizing the weapons. I wish you would help us remove the bounds on the weapons if possible. Gandalf nodded. That's fine. I will help you after we are out of the city. That's only if the other person's mind isn't too powerful or it would require the aid of energy stones and valuable minerals. If it still isn't enough, there's nothing I can do. No matter the result, hope was always a good thing to have. These two weapons were at least A tier. Yinkong and Hung would gain a substantial increase in power if the weapons could be released from their bounds, which exceeded every reward they had obtained in this world so far. Zheng was feeling excited as he patrolled the mine. The mine was extremely spacious. Despite its name, it had a height of over 10 meters. One could ride an elephant here, not just horses. The elephant just had to ignore gravity. The first day of journey inside the mine was peaceful. According to Gimli, they were still outside the residential area of Moria. The underground city was so big that they might not run into the orcs. The group let down their guard slightly, seeing the peacefulness of the first day. They were not as suspicious to every little thing. Then they set up camps on a flat area, lighted the fire and cooked their meals. After all was said, the group finally got the opportunity to rest. So that means you elves have the same explosive shot technique. Oh, you guys call it double blade shot. Strange name. Hung got along with Legolas because they both used bows and both could use the explosive shot technique. Hung was also a kind-hearted person. They exchanged tips about their techniques. This technique harms both the enemies and you. I can only use 20 shots at most, even with constant regeneration from my life force. My arms will become swollen, that prevents me from drawing the bow. If it's the triple blade shot, I can only use it 3 times. Legolas smiled. The elves were such a fair race that the girls blushed at his smile. Hung looked at his silver bow. Triple blade shot. If 3 arrows are already so difficult, what kind of technique is the 9-arrow shot that can pierce through the sun? On the other side, Zheng and Yinkong were sparring with Aragorn and Boromir. The characters were surprisingly strong due to the altered difficulty. Aragorn and Boromir could use battle chi. Zheng had seen this ability when he fought Teen Devil. It didn't last as long as chi, nor did it had the healing property, but it had a much higher burst potential. Zheng wasn't a match for Aragorn if he wasn't in Explosion. Explosion would push his strength above Aragorn by quite a bit. And Destruction would allow him to one-shot Aragorn. Of course, since this was simply a spar, neither side used their strongest moves. Zheng couldn't be sure this was Aragorn's limit. Boromir on the other hand was crying from the spar. It wasn't that Yinkong was too strong. She couldn't beat Boromir in a face-to-face fight without using her self-created technique. The invisible property of Excalibur Plus was such a great addition to her assassination techniques. Zheng wouldn't fight her so easily. Boromir underestimated her for being a little girl and fell to a disadvantaged position. He couldn't make a comeback unless he were to fight a life-and-death battle. The 4 of them stopped sparring before long. Boromir's clothes were in strips. The night attire turned to that of a homeless. Yinkong nodded at Zheng without saying a word, then headed to the bonfire. Zheng gave a rather awkward smile at Boromir and said, "Sorry, she's just like this. She always makes the situation awkward. Haha. Don't overthink it. She's not a match if you two were in a battle for life." Boromir stared at Yinkong. After Zheng's words, he smiled but then turned back to staring at her. Zheng had a bad feeling about this. The group entered a cycle of eat, walk, and rest. 4 days passed before they realized it. Gandalf got lost on Tihiway, but they came back to their path. The group finally arrived at the gate of Moria. A magnificent palace with pillars 5 meters in diameter standing on both sides. The pillars were recarved with symbols and pictures. There were hundreds of these pillars. The group walked through the palace. As they passed by a small room, Gimli rushed inside. The rest of the group followed after. Once inside the room, they saw a shaft of sunlight shone down through the ceiling onto a crypt. Gimli wailed on the crypt. Gandalf walked over and read. Here lies Balin, son of Fundin, Lord of Moria. He is dead. Gandalf took off his hat. His voice sounded helpless. It's as I feared. There are no dwarves left in Moria. He bent down and picked up a book. The players observed the room. This seemed like a meeting room of the dwarves. There were documents scattered on the ground and maps hung on the walls. Neos walked through the room. He seemed like he was walking casually, but his eyes were examining the map of Moria hung on the wall. After a while, he waved at Zheng and Gungnir. Take a look. The map labeled the storage room of the dwarves. There are a lot of ores, but it also takes a lot of ores to refine into the final product. The dwarves have many years of savings. So we are better off taking these refined metals and minerals instead of taking mining. We can exchange days to come back later if anyone wants to get mithril. Zheng and Gungnir looked at each other. They both nodded and agreed with Neos. Neos continued. The location of the storage room is a bit strange. There might be casualties if we head there without a plan. The task lands on you, Zheng. The nightmare is the only thing that can go there safely. Zheng asked. You still haven't told us where the room is located. A room to the side of the bridge of Hazad-dum, the bridge that collapsed during the escape in the movie. The record here shows there are 1 kilogram of mithril and 2 ounces of ithildin. It will be up to you whether we can obtain these. Neos said. Mithril was light and had a low density. 1 kilogram would be the size of the shirt Frodo was wearing. His shirt was made of mithril mixed with other metals. A kilogram of pure mithril was over 30,000 points from God. It was enough to craft dozens of energy storage rings. F***ck it. No risk, no gain. It's like running on flat ground anyway with the nightmare. The only worry is if the situation become worse than the plot. The powers of orcs and Balrog are also not known. Zheng sighed. Something would be wrong if God were to let them get past Moria so safely. So the Balrog could be insanely powerful. However, if the Balrog was so powerful, he wouldn't abandon it for the metals. He wanted to kill it for the energy stone and rewards. Gungnir could tell what Zheng was worrying. He bit his teeth and said. If you go get the metals, we will only take a quarter. And we will protect your team members when you are not here. Another thing, Neos and I have no use for a fire energy stone. If we are the ones who killed the Balrog, the energy stone is yours. And if you killed it, you still get the energy stone. Deal. Fine, then Zheng agreed, but the decision was difficult. A bang brought their attention away before he could say anything else. One of the hobbits accidentally made a corpse fell into the well. The crash echoed throughout halls. Everyone halted their voices. The echoes faded after a long while, but then drums were booming from all sides. They could faintly hear the growls of orcs. Orcs. Legolas repeated. He brought up his bow and arrows. Aragorn and Boromir also readied their weapons. Boromir especially ran toward the gate. However, an arrow nearly scraped the skin of his nose as he reached the gate. 1 more inch forward and that nose would have been a goner. Aragorn and Boromir quickly attempted to close the gate. A thought came to Zheng's mind, however, and he yelled. Wait. Let me out. He jumped on the nightmare, then pulled the rope. The horse neighed as it stood on its 2 back legs, then charged ahead. Crimson flame was burning in its eyes and on its hooves. Zheng channeled chi into Tiger's soul. The light blade bended at his will and covered him and the nightmare's whole body. As soon as they exited the gate, multiple arrows reached the light blade, then shattered. Zheng didn't pause despite seeing the humanoid monsters coming from all sides. He charged into them. Nah. The first orc he charged into busted, and all the orcs that came in contact with him all turned to pieces. The light blade might have changed its shape, but its power remained. Charging with the nightmare among a bunch of weak creatures was destructive. Anything that touched him was wounded, and anything that he ran over died. He and the nightmare tackled a path of flesh and blood. The orc's strength was unusually strong. The major characters weren't the only ones with increased power in this world. The orcs gained increased strength. Zheng estimated their strength was between 3 to 5 times that of a normal person. Their speed was perhaps slower than a normal person, but the strength was a counter to his tackling. After the nightmare ran through a few dozen orcs, it was forced to slow down. Good. Zheng shouted. The nightmare leaped. Zheng could see a large number of orcs and several 4-meter-high humanoid creatures charged into the room. He didn't have the time to think further. The nightmare leaped onto a pillar, then ran along it. Zheng turned body to the orcs below. Go. Kill. Chi entered Tiger's soul. The light blade extended up to 20 meters. The nightmare charged down the pillar. Zheng placed Tiger's soul horizontally and the light blade extended to the side of the horse. Over 100 orcs and the pillars on the way were sliced in two as the nightmare ran. It made a 180-degree turn and ran back. The orcs on the other side were then sliced in two. About a 40-meter area around him were laid with corpses and all the orcs dead. The orcs further back were shocked. None dared to approach him. Zheng took a deep breath. It was fulfilling massacring like this, but this tactic would be useless against more powerful creatures like the final ring wraith. Running head to it would be like asking for death. Another flaw was it consumed chi extremely fast. He used up 50% of his chi in that run. He wouldn't do it in an army without enough storage rings on backup. Only small-scale battles like this one was doable. While Zheng was catching his breath, he heard gunshots coming from the room. It was the sound of the gauze pistols. Sci-fi weapons were nullified against creatures native to this world. Did that mean Team Africa or Team Northern Iceland attacked his team while he was away? He didn't continue his fight and had the nightmare charge back toward the room. Any orcs that couldn't get out of his way on time was killed. It didn't take him much effort to get back into the room. What awaited him was a troll swinging a stick at him before he got sight of the players and movie characters. The trolls were 4 meters tall. Their intelligence was low but their strength was superb. Judging by the sound of the swing, their strength was about 20 times that of a normal person, on par with Zheng in explosion. The panic was getting into Zheng. He gave the nightmare more blood energy. Its speed increased a little more and it ran into the troll's torso before the stick fell on Zheng. The troll broke into pieces with that tackle. Zheng also took an impact and almost fell off the horse. Zheng shook his head to get it clear. He saw Xian shooting at all directions with his gauze pistols. Each of his shots would shoot down an orc leaping at him. There was a pile of corpses by his feet. After all the orcs were dead, he clapped his hands together. 2 empty magazines dropped off, then he slid the pistols back to his sleeves. The motion was so smooth as if he practiced it numerous times. Aren't those the gauze pistols? Zheng was dumbfounded. He didn't realize there were no more orcs coming into the room and all the orcs in this room were dead. You are correct. They are the gauze pistols. Xian nodded apathetically. He crouched down to examine the orc corpses. After a while, he went over to check the troll corpse. That's impossible. Don't sci-fi weapons have no effect here? Zheng yelled. The other veterans looked over. Both teams had their sci-fi weapon users. If the weapons could be used in this world, they would have a substantial increase in strength and other advantages. They could bring the characters over obstacles with their transportation tools. Xian nodded. Correct. Sci-fi weapons are still ineffective. So I tested combining sci-fi weapons with magic. I had Elrond carved rune words on the bullets back in Rivendell. The bullets contain life forces and enabled their usage. Now that you mentioned it, Zheng remembered Xian had a meeting with Haoshan. Were they discussing this at the time? Furthermore, if Xian could use the gauze pistols this way, then the gauze sniper rifle could become their trump card against the characters of this world. Gandalf suddenly said. Now's not the time to talk. We have to hurry to Hazadum Bridge. Everyone follow. Zheng was also aware of it. He nodded then ran ahead. Several arrows hit his light blade barrier. The barrier wavered as the arrows busted. It wasn't that the arrows were powerful but his barrier was running out of time. Zheng quickly backed into the room and dissipated the light blade. He recreated a new one before heading out again. Tiger Soul slashed 10 orcs in front before they could react. The rest of the group then followed behind Zheng. Endless orcs were coming out from all sides and climbing down the pillars. Their number was so huge. There were thousands just in this hall. The players groaned. There was nothing they could do other than keep running. Zheng stayed in front of the group. The mobility of the nightmare allowed him to kill off any orcs that attempted to come near. He killed numerous orcs in just a 100-meter path. And now Xian also recovered his combat strength. The gun kata had no defense but its power was so advantageous in such crowded battles. Many orcs died to the bullets. According to the movie, the Balrog's roars would come by the time the Fellowship was surrounded by the orcs. The orcs then scattered. However, the roar signaling the wake of the Balrog came before they got surrounded by the orcs. The orcs immediately stopped attacking the group as if they encountered the most horrifying thing in the world. All the orcs looked back. The path that they just came through was illuminated by a red light. Several streams of fire burst out before the orcs could scatter. The fire consumed an area spanning tens of meters. Inside the fire, a humanoid creature appeared. It opened its mouth and sprayed a beam of fire across. 1,000 orcs vaporized to ashes without uttering a sound. The group could sense that terrifying heat despite being so far away. Balrog, demon from the ancient ages, a creature that rivals the gods. Run! Gandalf shouted. He led the group toward the other side of the hall. The Balrog was still massacring the orcs as if it didn't see the humans. As Gandalf began running after the shout, a voice appeared in the players' minds. Balrog, a creature that naturally absorbs energy floating in the universe. Reproductive cycle of 100 years. Birth through embryogenesis. 1 fetus per cycle. Female Balrogs consume food amounting to 5 times their weight daily. Favors consuming humans. Releases gas poisonous to humans. They are therefore the biggest nemesis and enemies of humans. Balrogs were wiped to extinction in the end. Killing this non-poisonous Balrog with 30% of its power rewards 8,000 points and a rank A reward. Deduct 3,000 points off each person if it escapes. God's notification this time was puzzling. They had encountered monsters and bosses in previous movies but God never gave such hints. It even told them the origin of this Balrog. Judging by its words, this wasn't the Balrog of the Lord of the Rings world. It was a creature that the saints fought prior to developing God. It used to be an enemy to humans on Earth. What does it mean by non-poisonous Balrog with 30% its power? Richard asked in confusion. Neo snapped a piece of chocolate and said. It means that this Balrog fought the saints who were unlocked at the 5th stage. We are fighting one without poisonous gases and only has 30% its peak strength. God wants us to kill it. A veteran from Team Northern Iceland said. No poisonous gas and only 30% of its original strength. That means this Balrog is pretty much a piece of cake. Huh. Yeah. You can go ahead and give it the killing the blow. Neo sneered. He finished the chocolate bar on hand and turned around and run. The place they were standing in had gotten hotter. The Balrog was heinous. Fire followed its hands and feet. It turned an 100 square meter area into an ocean of fire. The orcs were screaming as they burned into charcoal. The fire gradually changed from red to blue. Anyone slightly knowledgeable knew what it meant. A fire couldn't normally obtain such color without reaching 1000 degrees. The players were afraid none of them could withstand the temperature. F***ck, isn't this a little too powerful? And it's only at 30% power without poisonous gas. What is the original Balrog like? Everyone thought to themselves. The thousands of orcs behind them were either burned to charcoal or eaten by the Balrog. The impression of this horrendous monster definitely scared the group. No one dared to run up to kill it. Gungnir and Zheng were confident in killing the Balrog with their self-created abilities for that rank A reward, but considering the collapse of the bridge that was about to come, they quickly ran ahead. It would be difficult to cross the area without the bridge. The fire was falling further and further behind them. That was too damn scary. Did such creatures really existed in ancient Earth? And our ancestors actually defeated them? Unbelievable. Zheng murmured. The feeling the Balrog gave him was immersive. He pondered and didn't think he could defeat it for certain even if he were to use destruction. And so the next question should be to find the storage room. A bird in hand was better than 10 in the forest. Getting the ores and minerals first was better than being greedy about this rank A reward. So he charged ahead with the nightmare. He moved past the rest of the group and headed down the bridge. He was the only one who didn't have to worry about the bridge collapsing. Before long, the view in front became clearer and brighter. Zheng was at the front and saw a huge broken bridge. A smaller stone bridge to the side could still allow people through. However, its appearance was old and worn. He didn't pay much attention to this. With a pull of the lead rope, the nightmare ran toward the bottom of the bridge. He knew that the third cave to the left under the bridge was the storage room when he saw the map. Right as the nightmare took a few steps, an arrow shot toward him. The arrow was neither powerful nor fast. He easily blocked it with Tiger's Soul. He raised his head to see dozens of orc archers lined up by the wall. In the original movie, these orc archers presented a lot of difficulty to the main characters. But the wall was so far away that if Zheng were to go over and kill them before obtaining his ores, the rest of the group might get killed by the Balrog. He hesitated for a brief moment. Then he jumped up from the horse and entered instant destruction. Several rank Yaku struck the orcs like a gale. They were cut to 2 pieces before they could react. The 1 or 2 that managed to escape wouldn't present any difficulty for the rest of the group. They had Hung and Legolas after all. Zheng fell back to the nightmare, then headed toward the storage room again. Thanks to the anti-gravity property of the nightmare, he didn't have to move using instant destruction along the broken bridge. The fight against the Balrog was coming soon. He couldn't waste his energy like that. So the nightmare was such a top-tier item. Unfortunately, there was only one. Zheng sighed. He soon entered a dark room. The flame from the nightmare's eyes and hooves illuminated it and revealed the metal and bronze bars. There was also a single silver bar placed in the center of the room. Its size was bigger than the normal metal and bronze bars. Next to the silver bar was a glass bottle containing a sand-like metal. It was at most several ounces. Without hesitation, Zheng grabbed the silver bar and glass bottle at once, then put them in the NA ring. He looked around to confirm there was no other special metal bars before having the nightmare leave the room. Now that he obtained the rare metals, he focused all his attention at the Balrog. The feeling it gave off was overwhelming. He might not be able to take it down even with destruction. The Balrogs were nemesis of humans in the past after all. Its power wasn't what they could rival at the moment despite being lowered by God. He considered following the plot and escape with the Fellowship. It would cost 3,000 points from every person, but they would earn thousands of points by the end of the movie anyway. They should stop if they wanted to keep their lives safe. But that's a rank A reward and 8,000 points. If I want to grow stronger, I have to walk on the border of life and death. I have to keep growing. Points and rewards are a necessity to this path. Yet Zheng felt he couldn't simply resign himself to defeat. His enemy was his clone, a devil. How could there be any chance of defeating someone so much stronger if he didn't put his life on the line? F***ck it. Let the rest of the team keep going. I have to give it a try. With the light blade barrier, I think I can at least escape if I fail to kill the Balrog. Zheng made his decision. He urged the nightmare to charge ahead. The rest of the group had crossed the bridge by this time. The bridge didn't collapse as vigorously as it did in the movie. The addition of the players might have changed this part. Everyone crossed it safely. The group then rushed toward the other end of the passageway. The way was safe despite the few orc archers on the cliff. Hong and Legolas took care of them. There was no casualty at the end of their run. After the group crossed the bridge, they entered a large hall. They only had to go through this wall to exit Moria. However, they felt the temperature raised as soon as they stepped into the hall. It was like the whole place was on fire. The heat curled their hair. Everyone sprinted as fast as they could. 10 meters later, they heard a violent roar coming from behind. A blue fire struck out through the wall. The wall exploded due to the extreme heat. Behind the wall was the Balrog holding a large sword formed by blue fire. It continued roaring. Heat waves and blue fire were coming through its mouth. The fire on the Balrog was turning more and more intense. Gandalf said as he was running. This is a mature Balrog. That's why the fire is blue. At least it isn't an aged Balrog or the fire would have turned white. At that time no one could go near it alive. Your body will ignite upon coming close to 100 meters of it. This is the Balrog, a demon of the ancient world. I never expect to see one in Moria. The rest of the group was running for their lives and no one paid much attention to what he had said. The players still had a little comfort because in the original plot, Gandalf was the only one who fell into the chasm. They only had to cross the stone bridge to reach safety. Unexpectedly, the Balrog roared again. It jumped. Its devilish wings flapped and before everyone realized, it landed 10 meters in front of them. Then a wave of fire struck toward them. The stone bridge was on the Balrog's back. F***ck it. I am going to die here if I don't risk it. Gungnir was someone that could let go of things. When he realized the circumstance had come to a life-deciding choice, he crushed the 3 rank C energy stones in his hand without a moment of hesitation. That was a rank B reward. A white freezing air rose from his arm. The air flowed from his arm to his body and enclosed his whole body in ice. On the other hand, Hung and Legolas initiated the first wave of attacks. Both of them used explosive shot. 2 accelerated arrows flew through with invisible speed and penetrated the Balrog's body instantly. Hung was using +3 enchanted arrows and Legolas' arrow was glowing green. The final ringwraith might not be able to take this attack too, not to mention the Balrog. The arrows opened up 2 large holes on the Balrog's body. It wailed but as a more intense fire burned on its body, the holes were closing by themselves. It seemed like the fire turned into part of its body. This miraculous healing ability surprised the 2 archers. Gandalf shouted. It's no use. The Balrog is the spirit of fire before it corrupted. Fire is its life. Normal earthly weapons can't kill it. Only ice attribute weapons are able to harm it but they still won't be able to kill the Balrog. The only exception is on the peak of the snowy mountain. You have to exhaust all its fire. Gandalf showed off his knowledge again. But the Balrog spew a pillar of fire and cut him off. He quickly raised his staff. A faded barrier blocked the fire on its outside. The temperature around however kept increasing. Gandalf was suffering untold misery in the center of it. Yet, he couldn't step away or else those behind him would be burned to ashes. A veteran player behind Gandalf also brought out a small and exquisite staff. This young man looked rather soft and gentle. He was also rather quiet in the previous days. He chanted his spell facing at the fire. A few seconds later, the staff sprayed a small cloud of icy mist. Everyone immediately felt the temperature decreased and let out a sigh of relief. My apologizes. The leader took all my ice energy stones so I can't use any magic level 3 and higher. This ice beam is the only magic I can use to lower the temperature. He said coyly. Then he repeated the magic a few more times. Gandalf chanted at the same time. I am the servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of honor. The dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Ud. After the chant, a circle of silver ember conjured outside his barrier. The ember began to absorb the Balrog's blue fire. Gandalf's expression eased a little bit. The rest of the group behind him let out a sigh of relief. But Gandalf shouted. It's too early to let your guard down. The ember can only stop it for 10 seconds. This Balrog is too powerful. It isn't a creature we can rival. It's a foe of the gods. I know you are strong, Zheng and your comrades. Use whatever you have or there won't be any chances left to use them. Yinkong rushed to Gandalf's back. She entered the shining at once. Her body turned blurry and her arms moved in a flurry while holding the invisible Excalibur in her hands. The light up to 2 meters in front of her bended along with the sound of strong wind blowing. That was due to a disruption to the balance of air density. The bending of light passed by Gandalf's barrier and struck right at the center of the Balrog's chest. The Balrog bellowed. Its chest and the fire around there began disintegrating inch by inch as the bending light hit it. It was as though countless tiny blades sliced its body. Seconds later, the bending light penetrated the Balrog's body, taking half its chest along. Fire were spewing from the edge of the hole. Legolas and Hung looked at each other. Legolas placed 3 arrows on his bow. Hung's body formed an arc as he drew the bow to a full moon. The aura he gave off surpassed that of the Balrogs at this moment. Everyone stared at him with shock. Hung was using his charged shot that could only be used once every fight. Legolas fired his 3-arrow explosive shot first. The arrows hit the tail of the one in front with a blast sequentially. The first arrow accelerated to an unbelievable speed. Pop! It hit the side of the Balrog's chest, right next to the hole. Just then, Hung released his charged shot. This arrow flew even faster than the explosive shot. Hung released it late but the arrow hit the other side of the Balrog's chest at the same time. Their cooperation was so perfect. The 2 arrows blasted both sides of the Balrog's chest. There was nothing holding his upper body anymore aside from the fire bursting out. The 3 of them split the Balrog in halves. The group saw the damage clearly. The Balrog wailed more violently with the separation of his chest. Fire spewed out from the rest of his body like it was worth pennies. Seeing that the Balrog seemed about to die, the group cheered out loud. Yet Gandalf yelled. No. The Balrog is getting into a frenzy. This wound won't kill it before exhausting all its fire. As he expected. The around on its body burned at an increasingly intense rate. It was the fire that held his body in place. At the rate that it's healing, it looked like the hole on the chest was going to be recovered. Hung had collapsed on the ground due to exhaustion. Yin Kong's arms were shaking. And Legolas hit his arm on the back. There was no way they could perform the same cooperation again. Thank you for delaying it for so long. Haha. Now look at my performance. An arrogant voice suddenly said. And at the same time, everyone felt the decrease in temperature. Gungnir broke out of the ice when they weren't looking. His lower body became a cloud of icy mist and floated in the air. The rest of his body was translucent as crystal. It seemed like the body was carved out of ice. Gungnir laughed. The authentic version of Ice Age. Leave it up to me. This attack is immensely powerful, but it takes too long to prepare and absorb the huge amount of energy. Haha. His body whirled and floated him out of Gandalf's barrier. The authentic version of Ice Age consumed 3 rank C energy stones. So if it wasn't strong enough, those ranked rewards would be so not worth it? Gungnir whirled into a blizzard as he exited the barrier. The temperature in the hall rapidly decreased in just several seconds. A layer of ice formed on the floor and stone pillars. The ice also protected the group inside. It began spreading, and in 10 seconds, the whole hall that was thousands of meters in area turned into a hall of ice. The only place the ice didn't reach was within 8 meters of the Balrog. Zhang thought to himself as he saw the scene. The self-created ability was indeed powerful. Gungnir's whole body had turned into ice, so it wasn't a lie when he said he could challenge Team Celestial by himself. Zhang exclaimed, then felt that he was too over himself when he thought he could take on anyone with explosion and destruction. The self-created abilities from other teams were all impressive. The difference between self-created abilities and exchanged ones were huge. What you could use at 100% potential was the real deal. Though Gungnir was aware of his fatal flaws, the authentic version of Ice Age required too much preparation in consumables and time. Its duration was short. That was why he created the simple version that used a single energy stone. The power was many times lower, but it didn't require any time for preparation and would last longer. But he was an arrow on a drawn bow right now, so he had to use the authentic version and finish the fight in under a minute. The Balrog's power exceeded his expectation. His ice forced the fire back to the Balrog, but he also couldn't advance any further. If this persisted, he would be dead after a minute. There was no way to enter the barrier again, as it only allowed things to leave. Gungnir clenched his teeth and held his position. As soon as he saw Zhang coming back on the nightmare, he immediately yelled with excitement. Hurry up and slice it to pieces. I can extinguish the fire after it gets weakened. Zhang rode the nightmare over and gave him a confirmation. He channeled chi to Tiger's soul, then enveloped himself in the light blade. Then he extended another light blade from the sword. The nightmare leaped. He slashed the sword at the Balrog's head.